Dracula is considered a Gothic novel, but I think it is more than that. I think it is a Gothic techno novel. Dracula combines the romance and the horror of the Gothic romance with the use of super modern technology. Dracula is a book that is almost cut in two. A lot of people have commented on it. Even some contemporary reviewers did not like it. The Spectator, July 31st, 1897. Mr. Stoker has shown considerable ability in the use that he has made of all the available traditions of vampirology. But we think his story would have been all the more effective if he had chosen an earlier period. The up-to-dateness of the book, the phonograph diaries, typewriters and so on hardly fits in with the medieval methods, which ultimately secured the victory for Count Dracula's foes. Dracula starts off as the quintessential Gothic novel. After Jonathan escapes, it suddenly turns into a different type of novel. We get transported back to England, where everything is whole and happy and sunny and things are going well. Meanwhile, Dracula is traveling to England, arrives at Whitby, and things start going wrong. And that's when it turns into a techno thriller. Because now we do not have a lot of the Gothic elements, but we have the techno thriller elements. A Gothic romance consists of these tropes: strange, far away places, Gothic architecture, lots of dark places, ruins, abbeys, monasteries, ruined castles. There is imprisonment, violent, powerful, foreign, very important, the meaning not English, male, antagonist, dark, strictly evil. Very often there is some perverse sexual stuff. There are intense emotions and sentimentality. There is a harrowing escape and rescue. There probably is a love story. There is supernatural stuff, beings, or not. Anne Radcliffe usually explains them away. That's why she was considered the rational Gothic romance writer. Ghosts, spirits, witches, vampires. And then we have the techno thriller. Now the techno thriller is pretty recent. Actually 100 years after Dracula, 1980, 1990 is when the genre was recognized. The techno thriller is a hybrid genre. It combines several genres like the sci-fi, the thriller, the adventure and action genres with the use of contemporary, sophisticated, high-tech details. A techno thriller has a strong, powerful protagonist, capable, intelligent. This protagonist exists in the real world. Gothic romance is far, far away, a different world almost. A techno thriller is here and now. Human existence is threatened on a global scale. There's lots of travel, there's lots of adventure and lots of action. And there is a lot of use of sophisticated technology. How does this work out in Dracula? The beginning, purely Gothic novel. It plays in a strange, far away place, abroad, Transylvania, archaic, picturesque, romantic. And our Jonathan writes it all down in his diary. We get storms, we get strange mists caused by Dracula. We got the wind in the back for sailing ships. That's also Dracula's doing. That's the supernatural bit, by the way. He's got several supernatural powers. And then, of course, very important, architecture. Gothic, of course. We've got our ruined castle. The castle is not really described, not from the outside. Jonathan, strangely enough, doesn't notice they have arrived until they're actually inside the courtyard. So Jonathan doesn't describe the castle. What we do have is a very Gothic Romanesque description of the inside of the castle. The castle is dusty, cobwebby. What he sees from the castle outside of the rooms where he lives, the apartment, is very decayed. Furniture, fabrics, everything's decayed, everything's dusty, everything's covered in cobwebs. Gothic romance for the win. And of course, there's another one, the hidden, forbidden rooms. He is actually quite unable to get into any of the other rooms except the ladies' room and Dracula's own room, which he doesn't really use, but it's called Dracula's room by Jonathan, so that's it. That's the room Dracula leaves from. Imprisonment. Somebody is confined for an extended time. Well, that happens. That's Jonathan. The mysterious, dark, powerful, violent, and thoroughly evil antagonist. Need I say more? Dracula. This man has very bad intentions. If the protagonist is a woman, distinctly dishonorable, perverse stuff, and sexual perverse stuff. You won't believe it in these books from the late 18th century, but there's like some really, really perverse stuff going on in them. I don't know if I want to mention that on YouTube. Rape and incest and cannibalism, lifelong immurement and rotting corpses. It's bad. One of the 3 vampire novels before Dracula, Carmilla, from 1872, is actually a lesbian vampire. I would say for the win, but 19th century, they probably considered it perverse and unnatural. Intense emotions. Well, how could they not? I don't think there's anybody in Dracula who gets out of the story without some severe trauma or death. It's definitely part of the Gothic romance stuff. Very gullible heroes or heroines. I don't know, I don't think I've ever seen this in a description of what a Gothic romance consists of, but I am a bit flabbergasted at how naive, if not actually dim and trusting these heroes and heroines are. For example, Castle of Wolfenbach. Matilda meets Charlotte, Countess de Malfour, completely throws her lot in with them, trusts them with everything. She's never met these people before. It turns out all right. It very often does, which I think is a bad lesson to teach. And Nine Coasters Waiting, late 50s? Gothic romance by Mary Stuart. Linda trusts Raoul de Valmy without any reservations. I read the book and I kept thinking, you don't know if you can trust this guy. Yeah, maybe you can trust him, but you won't want to trust him with your life. I would have gone with William Blake, not the William Blake, but the biologist William Blake, who she also meets on the mountain. That would be my choice. Of course, she ends up with romantic Raoul. So yeah, let's look at our gullible heroes. Jonathan. Jonathan Tripp is full of red flags, which he, probably out of hubris for being an Englishman, does not take serious at all. No, everybody freaks out when I'm telling them I'm going to visit Count Dracula. And they start making signs and get upset. You know what? Let's ask Dracula what all these things mean, because, he is a nobleman. He will be above all that stuff. Man, did he get that wrong. And then when he's in the castle, he gets other red flags. It takes him quite a while. I feel it takes him several weeks, maybe a week. I mean, he's there for 4 weeks, right? Dracula wants him to stay for a month. He's there for 4 weeks. I have the feeling it takes him very long time before he actually gets there. And then, of course, he's really imprisoned and very unhappy. And he does wait until the last day, until he's being fed to the 3 brides to actually escape. Spoiler. And then there's the 3 adventurers. Oh, Dr. Seward notices. Oh, look at that. She's almost like she's drained of blood. Oh no, she is drained of blood. How strange. Where did the blood go? There is no blood on her sheets or pillows or anywhere. Meanwhile, Van Helsing did get it and is hinting John doesn't get it. Quincy Morris connects Lucy's bloodlessness and constant need of blood transfusions. Luckily, they all have the same blood type or compatible blood types. He tells a story about how he had to shoot his favorite mare in the Argentine because there were vampire bats who sucked her dry during the night, and whatever was left he had to dispatch out of mercy. No, didn't get it. Mina would have gotten it immediately. There is a harrowing escape and a rescue. Jonathan escapes all on his own. He ends up almost as a raving madman in a train going from Klausenburg to Budapest. Take me home, home, home! And a According to the nurse, the simple indigenous folk deduced from his raving insanity that he must be an Englishman. I like that. After all the supercilious comments that Jonathan himself made. His raving maniac must be English. Mina's escape, well, she escaped, her soul escapes, but the actual action is a pursuit to have her soul saved. It is a pursuit to get Dracula before he reaches home and is in safety, because then he can hide anywhere where they can never find him, and the only thing he has to do is wait a little bit. And actually Mina at that point is pretty far into the change, so he won't have to wait long. But anyway, after 50 years, everybody else is dead, and he's back in business. Now she is rescued, literally, by our heroic adventurers, in particularly, quite right, her husband and Quincy Morris. And by his death, she is released. There is a love story. It actually starts off with a love story, Lucy's love story, that ends bad. And a Gothic romance love story doesn't have to end happily ever after. Some of them end horribly in death or lifelong suffering. And then there's Mina and Jonathan's love story. They do get each other. And after a lot of trauma and suffering and heroism, they do get a good happy ever after. And actually, everybody gets good happy ever after. Everybody who survives. The supernatural. So there's supernatural stuff going on. There are supernatural beings in a Gothic romance, and those are ghosts, spirits, witches, werewolves, vampires. The interesting thing is, Dracula is basically an amalgam of all of them. He's got hypnotic powers. He's got super strength. He can change himself into animals, bats and wolves. Vampires can be ghost-like in the book. They can change into glittering mists. That's very mesmerizing. That's also the hypnotic powers, of course. So yeah, we got our supernatural beings. Let's get to the techno thriller. The strong protagonist. Well, we have quite a lot of strong protagonists in this story. First half of the story, the Gothic romance story, it's Jonathan. Maybe a bit dim at times, but he is definitely strong. He doesn't let his experiences get him down. He doesn't let his hopeless situation get him down. He does some really heroic stuff, and he escapes. And then we have the adventurers. Quincy Morris, John Stewart and Arthur Holmwood. I mean, we know that they have had adventures. They are strong, resourceful, tough guys and intelligent. Then we have Bram van Helsing, maybe not the strongest man, but resilient mentally and super intelligent and a homo universalis. Very knowledgeable about very many different subjects, luckily about the dark, evil, mythical forces like vampires. And we got Mina. Mina, who is tough, super intelligent, very courageous. And we get no description of her bodily fitness, but considering what she goes through, physically also pretty tough. And they all exist in the contemporary world. Not the past, not some imaginary world. Here and now, 1890s England. The modern world. Not just contemporary, the modern world. And if Dracula isn't stopped, humanity is at stake. The whole world could be overrun with the undead. Travel. There is a lot of travel. There's really constant travel. Jonathan travels to Transylvania and back. Dracula himself travels to England and back. Mina and Lucy travel. They go to Whitby by the sea. Bram van Helsing travels from Amsterdam and back a couple of times, and then he travels to Transylvania and back. Arthur and Quincy travel. Arthur travels quite a lot because as Lucy gets sicker, his own father is at death's door, so he travels a lot to and fro and loses both of them. So there's a lot of traveling, and the traveling is very important for the story. Modern technology. Always keep in mind we are in the 1890s. But yeah, we've got a whole list of modern technology that the protagonist use against Dracula. And there are time restraints, not just because Mina is going to change into a vampire pretty soon, but also Dracula is learning fast. You know, wait a few months and he will have all these modern technologies at his fingertips. And it's an advantage for them, so they want to use them. We got telegrams, fast, reliable trains. We got a steam launch, typewriter, carbonic paper as they called it, carbon paper for us, blood transfusions. Luckily they all had compatible blood types. Actually it was discovered 3 years later that people have different blood types and you do want compatible blood types for blood transfusions. I can only guess how they found that out. Winchester rifles and hypnotism. We wouldn't call hypnotism a technology, but I think it counted as technology in 1890. So yeah, here we have a Gothic romance that switches, after a short intermezzo, into what I would call a Gothic romance horror techno thriller. Do you agree with me? Or do you have your own idea? I would really like to know it. Please share your view in the comments. And protect me from the dark and evil forces of the YouTube algorithms. And give me likes.